Have you ever stopped to think why, even with so much information available, we still feel lost when it comes to understanding ourselves? Like, why does it seem so difficult to put into words what we feel, even when our heart is screaming inside? Maybe you've already been through this. You wake up on a seemingly normal day, but you feel a weight in your chest that you don't know where it's coming from. And you try to follow the routine as if everything were fine, when in fact, it's not. And the most curious thing is that no one sees it. Everyone is running around, pretending to be in control, living on automatic. But what if I told you that this emotional confusion has a reason? And more, how can you start changing this right now? Just by adjusting the way you listen, understand yourself, and communicate with the world. Pause. Before continuing, comment below. Have you ever had a day when everything seemed fine on the outside, but inside it was chaos? Just so I know I'm not talking to myself. This video goes straight to the point and invites you to delve into something that goes far beyond the surface. So stay until the end, because you will be surprised by what you can discover about yourself. We grow up hearing that true love is someone who wants to be together all the time. That if you love, miss, want to call, want to see, want to share every second of your life with the other person. And yes, it's natural to want to be around, share moments, feel the other's own presence. But there's a very fine line between being together by choice and being stuck together out of fear. Fear of losing, of not being loved back, of seeming indifferent. And that's where a lot of people get lost. There is an almost romantic idea that asking for space is a sign of distancing, of crisis, of disinterest. But in reality, a healthy space within a relationship is one of the most mature and sincere ways to show love. It is in this space that individuality breathes, that emotions are organized, that feelings are strengthened, because no one can love another deeply if they are not at least at peace with themselves. Think with me. If you love someone, why not allow them to have moments of their own? That you live individual experiences, that you have time to think, grow, reflect. The same goes for you. When was the last time you took time just for yourself, without feeling guilty, without explaining, just because you needed it? We need to stop romanticizing the idea that a good relationship is one where there is no pause, where everything is shared, where the us cancels out the me. In practice, when you open up space within the relationship, you are saying, I trust you. And more than that, I respect myself enough to not abandon myself in this story. This doesn't distance, it brings you closer. Because when two individuals are whole, when each one respects their own process, what emerges from this meeting is much stronger than a desperate attempt at fusion. Love is also allowing the other person to miss you, to have time to breathe, to come back willingly, and not out of obligation. And it's okay if this sounds new or uncomfortable to you. We were not educated to think like that. In films, music, and soap operas, love is portrayed as a vital need, a constant presence, almost a dependency. But real life is different. In real life, we have good days and bad days. Sometimes we need silence, solitude, to rediscover who we are away from the noise of the world, even away from those we love. And this does not lessen the feeling, on the contrary, it strengthens it. When you understand that love and space are not enemies, you begin to realize that taking a break is not moving away. It is taking care of yourself, that respecting your limits is not selfishness, it is maturity. And if you lose yourself trying to please the other person all the time, eventually the relationship will collapse. So, instead of fearing space, how about embracing it? How about seeing it as an ally, as a gift that you offer, and offer yourself, so that love can blossom in a lighter, more honest, and more real way? There was a time in my life when I was so immersed in a relationship that I barely realized how much I had left important parts of myself aside. At first, everything seemed incredible, that phase where you want to be together all the time, sharing every achievement, every plan, every silly moment of the day. But over time, I began to notice small, Signs of internal disconnection. I stopped going to my favorite place to think. I put aside my personal projects. I started saying no to myself just so I could say yes to someone else. In an attempt to be present, I became absent from myself. And the crazy thing is that I thought this was proof of love. I thought that always giving in, shutting down desires, postponing dreams, was what you did when you truly loved. But do you know what happened? I became a version that not even I recognized anymore. I was present in someone's life but absent in mine, and that gave me a deep feeling of emptiness, as if I had lost myself in the middle of a relationship that, ironically, started with so much meaning. I remember a specific day, one of those days when everything seems to be falling apart on the inside, but no one notices on the outside. I was sitting on the couch, the house was silent, and my head was racing. That's when I asked myself, when did I stop being who I am? It seems simple, but this question took me apart. I had moved away from my friends, I stopped practicing my hobbies, I no longer read the books I loved, and even my opinions became weaker, as if I was afraid of being displeased. And then, with great pain, I understood. Loving someone doesn't mean disappearing. Love is not cancelling yourself. To love is to build together, but without destroying what each one is. And at that moment, I decided that I needed to find myself again, not to move away from the person I loved, but to reconnect with myself. Because how could I offer something true to someone if I wasn't whole inside? How could the other person truly love me if I wasn't even present within myself anymore? And it was in this process of rebuilding myself that I realized how many people around me were living similar stories. Friends, family, even strangers who, after I shared this, came to tell me stories that were so similar that they seemed like mirrors. There are many people living this same dilemma, trying to balance love for others and self-love, trying to handle everything without realizing that you are leaving your own essence behind. And maybe you who are listening to this now have already gone through or are going through something like this. Maybe you're feeling that silent anguish of not knowing where you end and someone else begins. And it's okay to feel that. It's okay to recognize. The important thing is to realize that you can find yourself again, that you can love without losing yourself, that the space within the relationship is a sacred place where both can grow together and apart at the same time. So, if this touched any part of you, breathe. You're not alone. And maybe this is the perfect time to start looking at yourself with more affection, more presence. And remember that the most important love in your life needs to start with you. How to balance presence with freedom. How can we truly be together, living a deep relationship without losing what makes us unique? This is, without a doubt, one of the biggest dilemmas any couple faces. And the most curious thing is that it is almost never discussed clearly. We enter relationships believing that being present is the top priority. And in a way, it really is. Presence is what builds intimacy, trust, and emotional security. But when this presence becomes wakefulness, vigilance, dependence, the scales begin to tip. On the other side is freedom. That freedom to be who you are, to have space to breathe, to grow individually, to make choices without fear of judgment. And the problem is that many people still see freedom as a threat, as if the desire to be alone for a while was a sign of crisis, or as if wanting to keep a piece of life all your own was synonymous with selfishness. This generates tension, insecurity, silent conflicts, and over time it corrodes what was supposed to be light. Perhaps the biggest mistake is to think that presence and freedom are opposite sides of a battlefield. But what if I told you that they can and should coexist, that it is not only possible but necessary for there to be a balance between being with others and continuing to be yourself? Because, deep down, true connection only happens when two whole people meet. Two people who don't complete each other because they are lacking, but who overflow because they are comfortable with themselves. And look, I know this isn't easy. We live in a culture that confuses love with possession, care with control, attention with invasion, and that all weighs heavily. When one wants to breathe and the other interprets it as abandonment, when one wants to express themselves freely and the other interprets it as indifference, the relationship begins to misalign. The base becomes fragile, and what was supposed to be an exchange becomes a charge. Nobody can live under this pressure all the time. Love shouldn't be a prison disguised as affection. Love is trusting enough to allow the other person to have a world beyond you and still choose to return. Now think with me, how many times have you found yourself in this dilemma, wanting to be close but missing you, or offering space but afraid of being forgotten? It's a real, human, common dilemma, but one that needs to be faced with emotional maturity. A healthy relationship is not just made up of constant presence. It is made of respect, listening, balance. It's about knowing when to approach and when to give space, without turning it into a power game. And it all starts with dialogue, with self-knowledge, with courage to say what you feel, without fear of being misinterpreted. So, if this resonated with you in any way, comment below. How do you deal with this in your relationship? Do you feel there is space to be you within the relationship? I'm curious to know, and yes, I'll read everything. Because it's by talking that we start to break these patterns and make space for a more conscious, freer, truer love. Now that we understand the dilemma between presence and freedom, and recognize how much this directly impacts the emotional health of relationships, it's time to take action. Because reflection without practice becomes theory, lost in the wind. And when it comes to conscious relationships, the first step, and perhaps the most challenging, is sincere communication. But it's not just any kind of conversation. No, it is a communication without guilt, without the fear of displeasing, without beating around the bush or being indirect. Speaking what you feel, clearly, honestly, and respectfully, is liberating. And yes, it may hurt at first, especially if you're not used to this level of vulnerability. But that's where the growth lies. Saying, for example, "I love being with you, but I also need time alone to recharge," shouldn't sound like rejection, but rather like maturity. Healthy relationships require emotional courage, and when there is real trust, this talk doesn't take away. On the eyes, contrary, it gets closer, generates complicity. The person who truly loves you will want to understand how you feel and not keep you silent for fear of their reaction. Another practice that makes a huge difference, and that few people have the courage to adopt, is the solo time schedule. I know it seems mechanical, right? Scheduling your own time within a relationship seems like someone who is already disconnecting. But calm down, look at it from another angle. We schedule meetings, gym, sessions, consultations, work, everything, but we don't reserve even a moment to be in our own presence. Why does time with ourselves have to be left to improvisation? Having a space in the day, or in the week, where you choose to be with yourself, whether reading, walking, listening to music, or even doing nothing, is essential to keep your mind balanced and your heart at peace. What's more, when both partners understand this and apply it, the relationship enters a lighter, more respectful flow. Each person understands that they don't need the other to be complete, but that they choose to be together out of affinity and not out of lack. This part is controversial. There are people who think this is coldness, but is it really? Tell me what you think, because this is a lot of fun. Isn't it precisely the excess of suffocating presence that strains bonds so much? And finally, a tip that can completely transform the way you experience your relationship. Encourage your partner's individuality. Instead of getting upset when he or she wants to do something alone, try to see it as an opportunity. Because when someone has the freedom to grow, explore, develop on their own, that person returns to the relationship more whole, more inspired, more connected to themselves and to you. Encouraging individuality is not about excluding yourself from a person's life. It is about understanding that they also have a parallel story, which does not cease to exist just because you are together. This doesn't threaten the connection, it just expands it. When you truly say, go out there, do what you love, enjoy your time, you are saying, I trust who you are, even when you're not by my side. And look, there is no greater proof of love than this. Relationship is not about merging two people into one. It's about walking side by side, each with their own steps, but with the same purpose. And the more you grow stronger as individuals, the stronger the bond between you becomes. Because love, when it is free, has room to grow. Now breathe a little. Close your eyes if you can, just for a few seconds. Silence the world outside and allow yourself to dive inside. Imagine a relationship where you can be whole, without having to hide parts of yourself, without having to dim your light to fit into the other person's space. A safe place where you can laugh out loud, be silent, dream, change your mind, and still be welcomed. Imagine being able to experience love lightly, without the weight of obligation, vigilance, or the fear of being misunderstood. Now feel it in your body, the tranquility of being next to someone who really sees you and still leaves you free to fly. This is emotional freedom. And there is nothing more powerful than loving with presence, but without imprisoning. Sometimes we forget that silence also speaks, that time alone also nourishes, that being distant for a moment does not mean abandonment, but emotional maturity. Feel this idea. Loving someone without wanting to shape them. Loving someone and still allowing him or her to continue to be who they always were, with their routines, desires, insecurities, and paths. This doesn't weaken the bond, it strengthens it, because true love does not require sacrifice of identity. He welcomes, embraces, shares, and when you understand this, you begin to see the relationship as a field of expansion, not limitation. At this moment, perhaps you are remembering situations in which you felt suffocated, or times when, without realizing it, it was you who limited the other person. Don't blame yourself. This is more common than it seems. The good news is that when we become aware, everything can be given new meaning. Now think carefully. What would it be like if you opened up more space within your relationship? Not to create distance, but to allow breathing. It would be lighter, wouldn't it? More authentic, more true. We talk a lot about love, but little about how to love without losing yourself. And maybe that's the main point here. Relationships don't have to be a battleground between what you feel and what you need. It can and should be a place of balance. And this balance begins when we look inside and ask ourselves honestly, am I respecting my space and that of others? If the answer is no, no problem. The most important thing is the willingness to start changing. Because deep down, everyone wants to be loved for who they are, not for an edited version of themselves. So now, in this moment, just breathe. Feel the weight going away. Feel the relief of knowing that you can build a relationship based on mutual respect, affection, and above all, freedom. The strongest love is the one that allows another to be who they are, and still chooses to be there every day. This subject is deeper than it seems at first glance. And as much as I have brought reflections, stories, and strategies throughout this video, the truth is that each relationship is a universe. Each person feels differently, lives differently, loves differently, and that is precisely why opening space for dialogue is so important. There is no ready-made formula. What exists is exchange, listening, vulnerability. And here, on this channel, what I want most is to create this safe space where we can really talk about what we feel without fear of being judged. So tell me, how do you deal with the balance between presence and freedom? Do you feel there is space to be you within your relationship? Have you ever felt suffocated or been afraid of giving too much space and losing someone? Share here in the comments. It may seem simple, but your story could be exactly what someone needs to hear to feel welcome today. We grow when we listen to other experiences, when we realize that we are not alone in our doubts and dilemmas. And it is with this spirit of lightness, empathy, and openness that I close this video. If this content touched you in any way, it takes a little time to digest, reflect, look more affectionately at your way of loving, at the way you relate, not only with others, but with yourself as well. Loving consciously is a daily exercise, and every step counts. And here, every time you share, comment, listen, and allow yourself to feel, you also inspire other people to do the same. Thank you for being here, for allowing yourself to live this conversation with an open heart. We'll meet in the next video. And until then, here's the invitation. Continue to know each other, continue to respect each other, and most importantly, continue to love freely.